Finally, what we got to read and or acquire if it was a read to, or we can even make commitments on what we potentially will read going forward.
I think so, yeah. Who goes first?
I went first on the last one. You can kick off on this one.
So, surprise, surprise, I read Sandman Volume 5.
Just a heads up, we both need to take off the blurring on our backgrounds because, yeah, as you did that, dude, the whole book blurred.
Or if all else fails, I'll just put a screenshot up for now on the video.
Could do that. Yes, I'm taking blur off for this one.
Okay. I don't know where to do that. I think I do.
It was hysterical because as you held, there we go. As you held that up, try hold it up again now. There we go. That's much better.
Okay. So I know I've gone on this whole Sandman journey and I've kind of fell off the bandwagon. It's going to be a bit confusing for anyone who hasn't read it. It might refresh a bit of your memory, but this is going to surprise you, but I don't know why, it was my least favorite volume of Sandman, and I don't know if I was distracted and it didn't rope me in, but when I mean least favorite, I still mean like really good, but just not as good as, the rest of the stuff. So, but what I don't know if you remember, I could have this still mixed up because I've read the volumes in such big spaces. This dives a lot into the character Barbie, and I think she was supposed to be the vortex and her grandmother took over for her or something like that. But this dives into what's happening is her dreams are bleeding into the real world.
Yeah.
So there's even this one big scene where there's this massive dog in the road and they like take it out and shoot it, and it's like one of her little friends and stuff, and basically it takes you on this whole roller coaster ride of she's got to go into her own dream world and sort of like sort it out. And you find out it's like her imaginary friend that she developed and made that's trying to take over her and get into the real world. So a really cool story. It's made me excited for Volume 6, which I forgot this, but I've been buying the Sandman volumes, the 30-year anniversary, which is all the same covers as this. It's got the big 30 on, because I want to try to keep all the volumes the same. And because our local comic shop hasn't had like 1 to 10 concurrently, I've been buying them as I find them. So, and I realized that I think it's the last time you and I were at Cosmic, I bought Volume 6. And I didn't click it at this. So now I'm like looking and the cover still feels new. And that does incidentally tie into what I'm committing to read next is my Volume 6 of Sandman. So yeah, man, like still stoked. Really excited to see what they eventually do with the TV show and all of that. But like I did say, I don't know if it was a distraction thing, but it was my least favorite. Like a lot of the other volumes have like these little weird, like the cat story or the Shakespeare story and all these little like tidbits. And I know Gaiman's probably setting us some crazy stuff up there, and I might need to go back and just page through it to make sure I didn't miss anything. But this was like mostly one concurrent long story throughout the whole volume, and I did struggle to pay attention as much as I normally would. But yeah, man, so that was the first read I got through. I don't know if you want to jump into something that you read, or if you want me to do my second read, or...
No, I can do. One that I picked up was being recommended to me by our good friend Dev the collector, Dev the cartoonist, and it is an anime title, manga actually, shall I say, called World's End Harem.
Okay.
Back of it over there and that, and I think it's the first like 2 or so pages are in color, and then as you get to like the book and stuff, it's black and white, all just black and white. It's been a while since I read manga, and then the one reason why Dave recommended it to me is because it's like, just, I'll censor it, but it's naughty manga. Ooh, so I'm just covering nipples there with my fingers. It was interesting to me. This is basically like Brian K. Vaughan's Why the Last Man. The whole story there is the main character is him and a monkey. They're like, something happens, a virus comes out and it just kills the male genome, like just males drop dead and only thing that's left is females. This is a kind of similar concept. This guy, he's picked up, it's set in the sort of the distant future. He's picked up a rare disease, and they put him into cryo-freeze because they think that they're so close to finding the cure to this genetic disease that he's got. In the next 5 to 10 years, they will have cured him and they'll bring him out of cryo-freeze. So his brother and younger sister are there when he goes in. There's a girl that he really, really likes, and she's like basically says like, I love you and I'll wait for you and blah, blah, blah. And then he gets thawed out 5 years later. Discover that within a year or so of him being frozen, this virus comes, call it the MK virus, the man killer virus. It just wipes out people. And they've tried artificial insemination that doesn't work. They've tried numerous things to repopulate the planet with more males. And it seems like he's developed an immunity to this virus somehow. So there's him and 4 other guys that are kind of, I don't know, in some guys' ultimate fantasies, it's like these guys are just there to breed. It's like everything revolves around them breeding and repopulating the human male species, like more males. So, they basically wake this guy up and tell him, like, this is what they want you to do. We'll assign you a woman or as many women as you want. They even give him, like, a catalog. Pick who you want and just go to town with them, and you can have a different one every night if you want to. It's kind of bizarre in that way. And he's reluctant to. He doesn't want to go that route. He's very much on this whole thing of like, no, I'm not livestock. You can't like use me for that kind of purposes, like a stud, and to just impregnate all of the things. So this is the first volume. I think there's like 10 of them already in the series.
Oh, yeah.
Dev's got them all, and I'm playing catch up, and there's naughty bits, there's risque bits. The way it's written is very good. It's been a while since I've read manga, and I'll be honest with you, that was the first thing that I had to get back into, is reading it back to front, and trying to follow how the speech bubbles would go when you're reading it from right to left as opposed to left to right. But once I got back into it again, I was like, okay, cool. And art is amazing, interesting kind of story. I'm digging it, so I'm going to try and hunt down the other ones and continue to read that one. Yeah, so that was my little find. Definitely for a mature audience.
Cool.
You?
So tying into, you'll understand this now, but in one of our previous videos, you talked about, you went on sort of Matt Ryan binge and stuff, and I semi-talked about this, but it's Hellblazer Rise and Fall.
Right. This is with the rapping Etrigan.
No, that was Damned, dude.
Oh, that was Damned, right, yes.
So this, I think you have 1 or 2 of the single issues. We bought them at the same time. It's quite a new release. And I bought the single issues, and it's under the DC Black label, the same as Damned. It's a typical magazine-styled side. The stories are about 3 issues. I think you bought The Question. That's also styled the same. And I bought the first issue, and then when I realized that they were going to release a hardcover with all 3 stories, and I kind of flogged and traded that issue and just got this from Cosmic. So I think I vaguely talked about the first issue on one of our old podcasts, but now I went back just to refresh my memory, and then I read all 3, the complete story. And I wanted to dive a little bit back into it because I had mixed feelings at first, but I ended up enjoying the story as a whole. And just to try quickly run you through it. So, I mean, it starts in its own weird way. This is what at first kind of like messed with me, because it's Origin-esque, but not. But it's also, I think, because these DC Black Label stories are always like Otherworld or a little self-contained story. It starts out right from the onset, dude, of basically, you're in the hospital room with Constantine's mother. She's giving birth to him, and it all seems like, happy ending, whatever. All of a sudden, the doctors start taking her away, and you're kind of like, what? And then you very quickly, because Constantine's always narrating, right? In the speech bubble's different. It's like square when it's narration. Yeah. And he says, that was the first person I killed. And then you very quickly realize that she didn't make the childbirth.
Okay.
And then it's very quickly, then it shows how he grows up with this dad that holds it against him. And his dad becomes this drunk and this like loser because all he can ever see is Constantine, the child that killed his mother. And that's how he grows up. And what's I find interesting is it grows up and it sets up in a way with what we know about Constantine, because he grows up a little rebel kid and everything his dad tells him not to do, he goes and does. And it's very like rock and roll, and that's kind of where the story for the most part picks up, which I find interesting, and I'll tell you why now. But basically it's him, they out of school, he's trying to impress this other girl, it's a little bit older than him, and he's got a kid the same age as him, which is more the nerdy goody two-shoes kid. And they go and he gets the girl cigarettes, which he stole from his dad. And the main reason he's there is to impress her, obviously, and give her cigarettes and stuff. And then they buy this like river embankment. And then Constantine's already trying to say to them, look, I'm going to show you guys a spell. And he tries to conjure up the spell. And they all, like kids, like, you're being an idiot. And lo and behold, the spell does nothing. And they kind of like, okay. And then they start walking. And as they do, the whole river embankment like caves in, and it like, and like they get flooded, and then like Constantine's underwater, or little young John, and the girl ends up pulling him out, and then they like kind of look around and they click that the little innocent kid, nowhere to be found. The one thing that irked me, dude, is the little kid's name is Billy, and it feels like in every story the kid called Billy is the kid who just dies. So yes, they find the kid dead on the embankment 2 days later, and then he says obviously that was his second kill, and it's painting a pattern of Constantine being held under this enormous guilt from a young age. At first I started twitching, and I was like, because everyone that knows a little bit about Constantine, I think even the Keanu Reeves film dives into that, it's his guilt around the death of Astra in Newcastle. That was the story that created him. Now, at first, that's why I was like, I had a problem with it, but at the same time, I kind of grew to be okay with it because this happened pre that as a kid. So they're almost slotting into the timeline, but it also could be its own self-contained story in a way. That like Constantine was playing with, the dark arts at such a young age. And maybe you want to just mention this now, but what I liked about that is if a kid, a 12 or 13-year-old now in this age is going through a similar age that I was, it's into punk rock and being a rebel and is not really liking Marvel comics and, goody two-shoes characters and superheroes, if he picks this up, it's to me a good enough origin but not origin story for them to be like to get the gist of the character that we know. It's a little bit different, but for them to like go on and maybe hunt down and search about the character more, and that I think is what made me come out of the whole title actually liking it. Is that I think it still has the same edge. The writer, it's actually I can't remember who it is, but did in their own way, but it's still very true to a lot of Constantine. And then, so just to dive back into the story, what ends up happening is I do feel like the writer was in some ways influenced by the Lucifer TV show a little bit, and you'll understand why now, because then it goes like years in advance, well, like later, and it's a typical weird out of place crime scene where this dude is like hanging through like a pierced thing, like an overweight dude with wings, and he's been murdered and he falls down, and this cop is walking, and they happen to stumble on it, and you very quickly realize the cop is the little girl that he grew up with. And so it's just convenient that she became a cop, an investigative cop. So it feels very Chloe-ish to me. And then, like Constantine walks down the alley and he's like, "You're going to need my help for this one." So it's very Lucifer and Chloe, where this is like Constantine, and I actually can't remember her name, but it's just bad. I think her name's Ash or something like that.
Okay. But
then they get hammered and they get drunk and they catch up, and there's a few other characters. Chaz, his driver's still in the story along the way, which is cool, cool payoff too. But what's interesting is you very quickly realize that this little kid has been taken on by a demon, and he's come back for some kind of revenge. That's how it seems. And so obviously they are both tied to the story and the guilt of him dying all those years ago. But what's interesting is then towards the end of the one volume, is, Constantine decides to go back home to his dingy apartment, and he instantly notices that all his traps have been disarmed, these demonic traps. And as he walks in, there's literally Lucifer sitting on his couch, but like their own version of Lucifer. So like it is Lucifer Morningstar, but I suppose within the context of, this storyline, I don't think it's, Sandman Lucifer, but like I have a love-hate relationship with how they did him. So he's very classic, like red horn, goatee, thing. I won't dive too much into him, but I know we can't talk forever on this, but I could probably talk forever on this. But long story short, like he quickly finds that this demon Constantine, when he did that spell all along, surprise, surprise, it actually did work. And there's this little mini demon that had been consuming and actually had become like, I think, Lord of Despair over his time. And Lucifer put him in his place, but Constantine pulled him into Earthrealm. And he took over this kid's body and started gaining all his strength again. And he actually managed to, this new little Lord of Despair, his name's Desperado or something, got hold of Lucifer's wings. So he's become all that more powerful. So essentially, so Constantine and Lucifer have to work together to stop this guy, which becomes another aspect of a buddy cop thing. Because what's interesting is, and this is where I say that it feels like the writer had a bit of influence from Lucifer, the TV show, is that Lucifer, even though he's mean and all-powerful, he becomes the comedic relief in the story. There's this constant, and I'm so glad you mentioned in the previous video where, Constantine, swings all ways or whatever, because there's sexual tension between him and Lucifer. It's played quite well. And even Lucifer screws with his mind where he thinks he slept with him. So you literally cut open to a scene like this. And Lucifer's like a bodybuilder, and Constantine's like, what just happened? And it's pretty cool that way. So, and then, like long story short, they do eventually solve it and they sort it out. But the scene that I showed you where Lucifer's like, did that just happen? And he's like, kind of don't flatter yourself. I have standards, Constantine. And he's like, really? So you wouldn't? And like one of the ways it ends is like, it's so brilliant, but so classy, where he's like, they come back to them. They're like, about that. And he's like, and Lucifer looks at like the Constantine, he pulls into him and they make out, but in this dingy bathroom. So it's like there's literally no class to it, but it fits in the story so well. But also the other part of the comedic relief where Lucifer plays, they trying to question someone and he just like rips his whole liver out. And Constantine's like, you can't do things like that on Earth. And that's where it was reminiscent of, someone like Chloe who would be putting Lucifer in line in the TV show. Like, you can't know Lucifer. There's ways you got to do this.
Yes.
But it worked for the story. So yeah, and there is a, and I'm actually, sorry, I'm going to go deep in the fields now, but it's so much so that I'd actually be keen to see what you think about it, because there is a throwback to a father story son storyline. And, because he's so entrenched in the Liverpool thing, there's a soccer aspect, a small football aspect to it. That is an in the fields moment where it's not as in the fields as Justice League Dark, the anime. To me, nothing can touch that. Like, but it was almost there. I think there'll be people who have appreciation for the way he defeats the demon. Lucifer helps him set that up, which is quite surprising. You got to read it. I don't want to spoil that much because it is a newish title, so people might be going out reading it. You might still maybe read it, but. As usual, it's Constantine's a bastard all the way till then he kind of like figures out that he's got to have this, and a little bit of a giveaway, but he realizes that he's got to let go of all his despair to defeat despair, and so there is, it's this, Constantine's got to get like in touch with his feels, which is cool. So it was a cool story, dude. And having said all that, that is the usual arc that Constantine follows, and that's why I said, at the end of it, I liked it because I think new readers could come in and fall in love with the Hellblazer just on this, Yeah. And like you said in the past, that's to me a good indication of the story was told well, because it's 3 issues that they did it in, so which is a very short arc. So, and it's got the action, it's got the comedic relief, it's got a bit of like touchy feel, like hit you in the feels sort of moments. It's not the most in the feels moment, but it was good enough for me. So yeah, dude. I'm sorry, I know I've babbled on about that, but yeah. So
okay.
I'll give it a solid thumbs up.
Cool. I think Cosmic has it aside for me, so I'm going to be picking it up
Nice.
probably end of the month or something. Yes. The next one that I ended up reading, I spoke about it on one of our other videos called The Hood.
Nice.
The Uncanny Omar recommended this as a little gem that you could find. I don't know if it's still in print. Written by Brian K. Vaughan, and the artist, I didn't know, a guy named Kyle Hotz. But I like his art. Really, really good in this. Kind of give you an idea of some of the art there. Some of the other characters, like the Shocker and all of them. And then maybe a better lighter panel somewhere. I don't know. His art it's cool.
Now dig the Hood page. It's very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, dude, I've got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed this story. I mean, Brian K. Vaughan is amazing. So he's the same guy that wrote Why the Last Man and all of those stories. They could literally take this, and they don't even need to retool or anything. This could be a perfect movie. The way he wrote this story, it's like, this guy isn't your hero. He's a small-time criminal, like does all kinds of little heists and robberies and stuff with his cousin. He's a flawed character. He's got a chick in his life. She's about to have his kid, but he cheats on her and stuff like that. He's not a all-around likable guy, but he does have redeeming qualities about him. So he is, in his own way, he's dealing with shit. So he really does love this chick that he's with, and he's excited to be a dad. But he's also, like, the reason he cheats on her and sleeps around is because he's not quite coming to grips with he's going to be a father and stuff like that. He's very loyal to his cousin. His cousin is really the one who gets him into shit and stuff like that. And the reason for a lot of the shit that goes wrong is his cousin, yet he's like loyal to the dude. It was a 6-part story. It involves a guy who's not the Kingpin. They call him the Golem. So apparently he was one of the Kingpin's generals, and shit happens. They make reference to Matt Murdock bringing down the Kingpin. And so now this Golem has branched out, and the Kingpin's back, but for some reason has left this Golem alone, hasn't challenged him or encroached on his sort of business. And then these guys go in and they do this little heist. They steal stuff that the Kingpin's men were going to steal. Not the Kingpin, the Golem's guys were going to steal. And the Golem contracts the likes of Constrictor, Shocker, B-grade Spider-Man villains, shall we say.
Okay.
And along the way, before this happens, before they go and steal from these guys, they go to this warehouse where it was supposed to be a major score, and this creature attacks them, and this creature's wearing the hood and stuff, and this guy just reflexly unloads into this creature, takes it out. It looks like it's dying on the ground, and it's dying in like a proper, like, Constantine-type demon summoning circle. Candles all around it, stuff written on the ground, pentagrams and shit. And this guy just doesn't want to leave empty-handed. He steals the boots because he needs a new pair of shoes, and he steals this hood. And he figures out that the boots allow him to levitate and fly. And the hood, whenever he holds his breath, he goes invisible.
Okay.
So as long as he's holding his breath, he's invisible. And he does what, like any guy who's found this, as he figures out the boots, he starts flying around the city, walking around the city, goes to see his cousin, talking to him through his window. The cousin lives on like the 5th story of a building, and the cousin's like, "Why did you come up my fire escape?" And he's like, "Dude, like, think, you don't have a fire escape." So the guy like looks at him, he's like, "Oh my God, you're flying, how are you flying?" And then they figure out the power with the cloak, and when he holds his breath, and he does what any guy who figures out that I can turn invisible does. He goes to a gym, holds his breath, and he goes in the ladies' change room, and he just sits there while these chicks are changing and stuff. It's like, every guy has had that fantasy. Where I could be invisible. What would I do? I'd hang out with, where I could see.
It's funny how that could be torture at the same time, because you're like fighting for your breath, but you're like, one more chick, come in.
Exactly right. So he does all of those things, and the way Brian K. Vaughan writes it is like, as I was reading, I was like, yeah. I remember as a kid talking about if I had the power invisibility, that's what I would do. I'd go and sit in the girls' change room and just enjoy it, so to speak. And as it goes on, you figure out that this guy like something happens and a cop gets killed, and he's the one who kills the cop, but it's purely by accident. And he's trying to deal with that guilt, like, it was an accident, this guy's died because of me, kind of thing. And he tries to redeem himself, and the way that the story is written, like this Gollum wants his stuff back that they stole from him. He makes a deal with Gollum. You know Gollum's going to like double cross him and try and kill him. He's thought about that too. So it was a really good story. And the way it all ends, I was like, I could literally be watching this as a movie. And as it ends, the Brian K. Vaughan sets it up like there could easily be a sequel or a trilogy out of this, because while the Gollum gets a phone call at one stage, he answers the phone, he starts like all through the thing, he's like the stoic mob boss, and nothing phases him, and he just has people killed like at a whim, kind of thing. And then he gets a phone call from someone, and then suddenly he cowers, and he's calling this person my master and stuff like that. So he's serving someone else, and you don't know who that is. So if there was a sequel to this, you'd imagine they would have revealed who that was. Then there's another character that, off the back of him killing this cop, this character wants revenge and to go after the Hood. Believes that the Hood is responsible and now wants to kill him. And this person, as the book goes on, you figure out they're one of Tony Stark's top engineers. This person knows how to build some tech and creates himself like a little suit, and they're going to go after the Hood now. And that's all you see at it, at like second last page of the book. And it ends with this like that creature that he originally killed kind of comes back to life. And while the thing's going on, when he's in certain situations where he's under pressure, he almost like the Hood kind of possesses him, and he can shoot like lightning and mysticism stuff out of him and that, and he says things in a different language. So it's like, obviously if there was a second book, they would explore that a bit more, like what's actually happening to him every time he puts on the Hood and stuff. So just from start to end, dude, it properly could have been a movie that you watched, and the character was interesting enough where he's a bad guy, but he's a bad guy with good intentions, and like, What
I like about that, dude, is just off what you've told me, is the fact that they've taken like almost, I don't want to call it B-list characters, and they've created an interesting world where they get to shine, which I think is, because you think about it realistically, anyone in that world would have like their own little small side agendas and stuff. They wouldn't just solely exist in Iron Man's universe, they would be kind of like doing something on the side, or so.
100%, dude. And there's when the cousin gets arrested, he's in jail. Cousin's like, dude, you need to get me out of here. Like, you need to give me a top class lawyer. And he goes, who can you think of? He's like, well, there is that Matt Murdock blind lawyer, but it recently came out that he's been two-timing as a masked vigilante at night. So I don't know how badly you want that kind of guy in your corner. So I don't know. Maybe let's find out who Matt Murdock's partner was. Let's get that guy to defend you. So there's references to these characters and stuff. Kingpin's referenced often with the Gollum. Dude, and it's the way he writes the gangsters, the violence or degree of violence that's in there. It's just a well done, well written story. Brian K. Vaughan is top notch, dude. There's nice FBI guys that are coming into the fray, trying to make a career for themselves, taking down this new super villain before he becomes too hardcore and stuff. And these guys are guilty of doing some dodgy shit. So it's just a well done story with many little subplots. And like you say, characters that I knew straight away. Like, I didn't know who the Gollum was, but suddenly there's like, oh shit, that's Shocker, and that's Constrictor, and that's one of the Goblin characters. I think it was Hobgoblin or something like that. Flaming Pumpkinhead, got his little grenades that he throws and shit. So all these characters that are not Spider-Man's A-list, but certainly they're Spidey villains, and you can see that they're almost like villains for hire, kind of thing, working for a mob boss. So good story, dude. It's like, it was a nice, good read. You could read it in one sitting if you wanted to. I like the art, I like the storytelling, everything about it. It's a nice little gem. Proper, as Omar said, this is a proper little gem. So nice. I couldn't get it at the comic shops. I found some guy put a post on a Facebook thing.
Oh, cool.
And he took a whole bunch of pictures of all these graphic novels, and then I saw it there, and I was like, I need that. And all the stuff he was selling, I think I got 4 or 5 books from him. That was the only one that I really, really wanted. And I'm actually not sorry.
Nice.
Good reads.
Awesome, dude.